Hey, welcome back to our program. You know, Mike, 40, 50 years ago, we had a lot of different sci-fi movies in which aliens from all over the place were trying to attack and kill us. And you know, even today, we still have those movies where they depict aliens that are going to attack us and eat us and get rid of us.
What triggered a lot of that was I think the nuclear bombs that went off at World War II and how things were, you know, it changed insects into big crazy things. And there was a spike in alien abductions or sightings at that point. And there's a theory that with us playing with nuclear weapons that they might have had to intervene, and that's why there was a spike in that.
Well, today we have an individual that has, she's an intuitive individual that has...
Clear conduit channel.
Yeah, that has helped individuals to really understand better their origins and a lot of information about different kinds of aliens. And it's our pleasure to welcome back Pamela. Pamela, it's great having you back on our program, talking about a subject that many of us know a little bit about, and we've learned a lot from different TV shows and movies. So welcome.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Mike. I love your show. I love what you're doing. So thank you for spreading logical knowledge in ways that we can understand. Thank you for connecting spirit and science in this very unique form of reality.
Well, that's very kind. But when you have featured guests like yourself,
we couldn't do it alone. That's for sure.
No.
Who's going to listen to
us? So let's talk a little bit about aliens. Since I'm the oldest in the group here, I remember back, and I be quite frank with you, I've been watching some of those 1950, 1960 movies where the aliens come down and they attack, and they're neat.
Yeah, they're basically here to destroy us and take over the world, like War of the Worlds.
Yes, and you come with a more positive perspective. You know, that you have at times talked with individuals in the fourth and the fifth dimension, and you have so share with us, are aliens bad?
What a way to start a show. Are aliens bad?
Yeah.
We're going to have to make a quotation of that and put that on an internet meme that goes viral quite soon. With that being stated, yes, I am Pamela Aaralyn. I'm a clear conduit channel, have been awakened since age 5. And the reason why I relate to this topic is because I see in a unique way, and I see through the ether. I don't see objects as solid. I see things for what they really are. And I see this third dimensional perspective in a way where my clairvoyance is unique to be able to see what you call aliens. And when I share with you what I'm about to share with you today, I'm hoping to bring a fresh perspective, you know, to those of us who are watching the form of reality and throughout the world, based upon my astral travel experiences, studying galactic history, observing what you call aliens since age 5. I do not have fear, and I'm going to tell you why. Earth is the only place, because it is a third dimensional existence, Earth and all parallel realities to Earth, all planets that have third dimensional existences, that's us. We are the only beings out there in all of the universes that actually have duality, meaning something is good for us or bad for us. That's why I kind of giggled at your question, are aliens bad? In my perspective as a multidimensional being who can travel through many different dimensions of time, the way that I've perceived extraterrestrials is that some have some positive intentions, some have some negative intentions, some have very neutral intentions. but many are playing roles with each other because they are all fractals of source consciousness and they are all working together. So my perspective is neither positive nor negative. My perspective is simply based upon my investigations of extraterrestrial beings since H5, having been on these many planets, having bilocated and having astral traveled in spirit form, and having also had many conversations with what you call aliens. What I discovered is that most humans who are currently on the planet, if you're going to fear anyone, it's the human race that's more volatile than any other race out there currently. The humans are the most destructive. So are aliens bad? It's a perception. You can go further if you want.
Yeah, and that's a very good description, because usually, in these 1950s and 1960 movies, oftentimes it's we humans that get the gun.
Maybe it's a lot of projection.
It could be.
We're putting our actions into somebody else. That's what we would do if we go to another world.
Yeah. Oh, that's very, very true. And so in your discussion, in your work, your remote viewing and your astral projection and things of that nature, when you've been to those other worlds, etc., how do those off-worlders view Earth? They should stay away from us. They should be a part of us. What's your perception on how they approach us?
They want to be a part of us, and many of them are.
Huh.
So, surprise, we are the aliens. There are not many. The way that Source projects at this point in our relevance, in our galactic history, there are not many that are left on Earth in a human incarnation that is strictly human with no extraterrestrial component. We are a big hodgepodge of many types of beings, including human, but human is the least fractal of our divinity and of our nature, both scientifically and spiritually. Our light bodies are normally extraterrestrials. This is a giant galactic experiment, and it is actually a blessing and an honor and a privilege to be here. We literally wait in line to be here.
So
I've heard that from Dolores Cannon too.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to be here.
Yeah.
Especially at this time.
We choose to come here.
At this time is a very interesting time with the ascension and whatever you want to call this point in time.
So what you're saying is basically when we're in this spirit form, in between our lives here on the earth, first of all, we choose to come down as either Patrick or Mike or Pamela, but we choose that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We do choose it. Earth is a free will environment, and we are aware from a certain perspective that we will go through difficult times. We choose our spiritual paths and our spiritual lessons and our reasons and how we are going to expand. We choose our parents. These many people call soul contracts. I believe that the word contract is a very binding word. I prefer the word soul agreement because I believe that a contract can be changed and realigned because of our free will. So yes, we do choose.
Okay, that brings up another idea that, if we're different, we have these agreements and we choose these things, but we don't remember it. How do aliens on other worlds have life? Do they remember their past lives? Do they have past lives? In what kind of construct do they operate in?
In the third and the fourth dimensional existences, there is the veil of amnesia that is still there. That's what I like to call it. It is a choice, and it is within what you call the soul contracts. I call them the agreements, and whatever you want to call them, pre-birth intentions. Some people call them in various religions. Karma, some people call it. I personally don't believe that karma exists in any punishing facet any further. That ended 17 and a half years ago or so. However, beings in other dimensions experience life in ways where the veil of amnesia is not existing. They are aware of who they are. They are aware that they can create. They are aware of everything that they've ever done, including experiences on Earth, if they should have any, if they do. But then when they also incarnate in third dimensional experiences, they are aware that they will forget everything. That is a part of the divine journey. You know, that's the expansion. That's the method of expansion that they use. So it's a privilege to come to Earth. And they're all waiting in line to come and expand in this exact way, where they will choose what gambit of emotions they experience. Some come to experience spiritual lessons in association with an expression of sadness and depression, anxieties, and other forms of dark night of the soul. Some are incredibly angry and murderous, and you know where I'm going with that. Some experience pure bliss.
Well, you know, it sort of goes with saying you can't understand that bliss without having been depressed. You can't understand love without having the absence of love or anger.
You can in other dimensional existences because they don't understand duality because they haven't perceived it yet. But the point is, I'm just going to put this simply. Extraterrestrials are bored light beings who have expanded. Source has expanded and learned to the extent that what better way to learn than to de-evolve, go into a limited third dimensional body, and then expand again. Remember who you are. And every time you remember who you are again, you expand further. So that's a new method of expansion. And many humans are calling that a galactic experiment. I call it a privilege.
To me, it sounds a little bit like a cruel joke.
Yeah, I guess it
to come
depends.
here
Yeah.
is like forget everything, start from zero.
You know, someone once mentioned that life is not fair. You know, when we as simple human beings compare our lives with other individuals, in America, we almost live like kings and queens in the fact that we can go to our refrigerator and there's food, we can drive nice cars. Well, a third of the population is looking for food. Mm-hmm. And, you know, sometimes it's very difficult to justify it's fair for one individual, but it's not fair for the other. What do you think?
That is a duality-based perception that is limited to the third and fourth dimensions. Believe it or not, people in their perspectives in third world countries choose that as well. They choose that method of expansion because think about it. If that perspective is so difficult and the reward is equal, can you imagine how big that reward is? Can you imagine how much expansion they would gain from that?
That's a good point.
If you've ever been to
they are so involved that they have to choose the most difficult path because their evolution is so expansive that they choose this, and this leads to the fair and unfair statement.
Yeah.
Back to that, many people will say murderers. That's not fair to the victim. The victim chooses that stance in their pre-birth intentions and their soul agreements prior to reincarnation as well. They're choosing that, and the murderer is choosing to love them enough to say, okay, I'll play that role. No one else is going to do it in your soul family. I suppose I'll come down and murder you so that you can expand even further. That's how much that being loves you, is to play that form of expansion. I know that's hard to wrap our brains around. Oh yeah, you love me, so you're going to kill me. But yeah, that's a little bit how it works.
Well, no, it's, you know, if you've been to, which I haven't, been to another country where it's poorer, they're very generous people. You know, they don't have anything, but they're willing to give you everything that they have, and they're happy. You don't have to have everything that we have to be happy. And it's a simpler existence. They don't have to worry about their cable or their cell phone or their 401k or any of that stuff. It's just like just cruising around the forest looking for food, and you know, that's kind of a pure existence. So it's nothing to look down on.
Well, you know, you bring up a good point in the fact that we have been trained or taught or led to the fact that this is a karma, we're on a karma wheel. And if we do something bad for someone, we are going to come back in another life, and our life is going to be bad.
Or in some of the other religions that, you know, you do something bad, the person who's been wronged can count on them getting punished.
Yes, and you're
It's
sort
not
of,
necessarily like that.
yeah, you're sort of bringing up a more positive viewpoint that, first of all, we choose to come here, and number two, we choose many of those experiences we want to experience, and so it's rather interesting what you're saying.
I'm going to give you a perspective that will be really easy to wrap your brains around for just about any of us. If you've watched the movie What Dreams May Come
Yes.
with Robin Williams, and you remember that point when they
yes.
finally get to heaven after all of that terrible suffering, and they get to that place that we call heaven, and they sat there for a while, and there are the kids, and there's the dog, and this and that, and they're like, oh, it's so beautiful. And then after about 15 minutes, I think it was Robin Williams who looked at his wife, or she looked at him, and one of them said, what now?
Yeah.
This
What
is
are we
what
gonna do now?
happens in higher dimensional existences. Basically, we have all of these wonderful things, and we don't really have a relevance of what to do with that. We enjoy it, and then we go, how can we expand further? You know what I mean? So karma is not going to that level and that perspective. I'm going to give you a different analogy. In my age group, what we did as a kid was we played video games, particularly Atari and Super Mario Brothers. So if you think about the third dimensional existences as a bit of a game, and game over, what do you do when the game's over? Depending upon how well you played the game, you may go, yay, or you may toss the controller at the screen and go, oh, got me again, that boss. I'm never going to win there at the end of, the Mario Castle when, you're trying to save Princess Peach. Basically speaking, but the more times you go back and do it, you go, oh, if I jump over that fire maybe 2 split seconds prior to the time that I did it last time, and I know that you're going to come across and say, what about the veil of amnesia? But by the time you're there, you start to remember, and that's why many of us have contracts and alignments towards spiritual awakenings. Now, some of us just want to come die in the fire over and over again. That's a particular interesting genetic breed of humans, but not many. Most have contracts of expansion. And we come here and we go, oh, if life is a video game and I'm going to go save Princess Peach, aka my higher self, what I'm going to do is maybe think about that dragon. I'm going to think about the duality dragon, and I'm going to do it a little differently when I wake up this time. When I recognize my divinity and honor my spiritual gifts, my etheric abilities that I bring here, and I awaken and I go, oh, this is who I am. These are my abilities. Then I'm going to kill the crap out of that dragon, or maybe I'm going to hug him. But either way, I'm going to learn each time. And depending upon how you played the game, this is what Christians call the life review. I just call it the spirit world. When you're in the fourth dimension, before you reconnect with source and rejoin with source, you have what like I said, what the Christians call the life review. You sit around with your ancestors and you talk about that, and you say, oh, how did you enjoy that experience? And what did you learn this time? And would you like to try it again?
See that's so foreign to more traditional religious goers, where there's a thought that you're either going to go to heaven or hell, and there's someone judging you, and
well, that's when man made religion and put gatekeepers for control.
oh, okay,
Right, and they put the priests in between you and God, and the teaching is now that we are. God is in everything. We are God. God's, infused into everything. And,
that's true.
in the past religions, to keep it separate is power, because they hold that power.
So are you saying that there's a spark of the source of what some people call God in each one of us,
Absolutely.
even on the other side?
Absolutely.
And so I'm assuming that most of us that live on Earth really had their start on Earth. We were taught that there was no reincarnation in one of the traditional faiths. That you are born and
One go around and you're done.
yeah. But in essence, what you're saying is that we choose, number one, to come back or experience. We also choose to go elsewhere. from what I understand. Maybe I want to learn more what it's like to love, and so I go to a planet system that has more love.
Okay, if you had a origin from a place, say like a Palladian, right? Would you come here, do the life, and then go back to the Pleiades?
Some do. I mean, basically,
That's not really home. Home is just...
That's your choice. Humans were created, but they're not an origin point.
They are not.
This is going to come as a shock to most people that are listening to this. There are very few Earthlings that were created on Earth, but those who were are also genetic experiments. There's no pure human left on this Earth at this point that has no extraterrestrial background. And the few that were at some point were a part of Atlantis and Lemuria. They were known as Native Americans, Aboriginals. They were some of the first beings on the planet, but they too were created. You know what I mean?
How about Anunnaki?
Anunnaki was one of the many races who created humans, and they are a spark of God as well. And they used to be quite divine beings with wonderful purposes, although very non-sentient in nature. They started out with some wonderful intentions that went a little bit awry, in my opinion. That's me putting it very diplomatically. They did not do well with the construction of trying to create a race of humans whom they wished to enslave for their own benefit. However, there were many other types of human races that were created by Pleiadians and Lemurians who were very sentient in nature. And these beings created fully awakened expressions with 11 to 12 strands of active DNA.
And what we have, two strands of DNA?
Yeah.
And they have 12, 14? There was a theory that we were reading that indicated that the Earthlings were manufactured from 3, 4, 5 different species on Earth. And so
yes,
the question comes into those species existed prior to Earth. Is that correct?
Many species existed prior to humans. Many animal species, many algae species even.
See,
so who do you say Adam and Eve? I don't know if that's a charged thing. Or were they aliens?
They were some of the first created humans, but they had a very, very awakened nature. They were created by Pleiadians and Lemurians and Lyran feline beings who were acting as a soul group together to create Adam and Eve. And they, in their source nature, with what humans call God, created Adam and Eve as very awakened beings.
And then there were other beings on Earth at the same time.
At that time, yes, but of course, in the biblical perspective, they're not discussed.
Yeah,
right. That's what I'm getting at.
As many of us know, the Bible is a compilation of many different texts and versions and cultures intermixed over a 6,000 year period, and as those myths were transferred down, they all of a sudden became gospel truth. This is the way it is, and
the only way it is. Recognize duality because it's Earth. So
that's right.
Then Constantine began to tell people this is the way, and they wrote in there, "I am the way, the truth, and the light, and no one can come through the Father but through me."
That's right.
Jesus did say, "I am the way, truth, and the light," but he did not say, "I am the only way, truth, and the light." And it was added, "And no one can come through the Father but through me." That was a Roman addition.
And as we really explore those different things, it still remains, if we weren't the first that was created, but you're talking about Pleiadians, you're talking about Arcturians, Venusians, are Venusians from Venus?
They're from many places, but yes, that's one.
There's the Mantis race, the Syrians,
Yes.
the Lyrans. It seems that as we start really recognizing that we aren't the only ones and we're not the first ones, there's a whole culture of different species out just in our solar, or not our solar, but our galaxy. And
Yes.
the question always comes down to, for skeptics, how do we really know?
Yeah, how do you come up with these different things and put personalities and traits to them? Where did this information come from? I know you're not the only one, but how was that put together?
It's still being put together as humans become more aware of their divinity and their nature. But for people who can see through the ether, they normally can also astral travel. And then they become historians, researchers. I became a galactic historian at an early age because I had a lot of curiosity. I would see a star and say, oh, I want to go there. I am there.
Huh.
And for me, it was as simple as that. I was told, at age 5 that I can go where I wish and I could be who I wish and I could experience what I wish. And my guides meant that. So I'd see a star and say, I want to go there. I want to go to a star that I can't see. And then I'd be in a certain galactic system by locating and experiencing life there. And here's the thing, time doesn't exist there. So I could spend 7 years on Pleiades, come back to my bed, be 5 years old, in my little bed with the pink little duvet, you know what I'm saying? And
Sure.
wake up and it could have been a 5-minute dream.
You
And
know-
I will remember all of it and go tell my mother I was on this planet called Pleiades and this is what was happening. And I was there for a long amount of time. I've forgotten exactly how long. And then what occurred was over the course of 41 years, I began to take a lot of notes about my travels.
That's something that people don't understand. When you're in the 4th or 5th dimension, they might say, well, how long does it take to get there? It's just like, there is no time to get there. You just are here, and then you were there.
And quantum physics are starting to show that does exist.
Mm-hmm.
And many individuals that we've had on our form of reality, both past and future, have had similar experiences in which it's foreign to those individuals that haven't. But you're sort of envied in the fact that if you are able to get into that dimensional travel, things of that nature, some of us are going, well, why can't we? And what stops us?
You want the simple answer to that?
Yes.
Your fear.
Okay.
Many people come to me upon their journeys and what I call the great spiritual awakening, and they go, I want to astral travel. And being that I do teach how to astral travel, I teach them, or I used to. I've stopped recently because after having astral travel, they would get a little bit out of their bodies, their light body would leave, and they would experience something beautiful. And then they would be, some brief little thought would come from ego that would say, oh, that's kind of weird. I wonder if that's bad. I wonder if that's okay. And just the wondering, just the possibility of fear causes the entire experience to shift. They'd be in a different dimension because it's uncontrolled. And that's how I was when I first started astral traveling as well. If I saw something that looked weird, for instance, one of my more unusual astral experiences is when I first discovered the mantis race. And they look like giant praying mantises,
Wow.
except that they are bipedal.
Yeah.
And they're walking around about 7 to 10 feet tall. Their heads are bigger than than most of our body, like from trunk to head. That's the size of their head, from our waist to our head. So if you can imagine as a 5-year-old seeing that, and they also come in swarms. So if you can imagine about 100,000 of them coming at you, and they make noise when they're really excited. There's a loud buzzing, clicking noise. It sounds like lotus. So if you can imagine that when you're traveling and that comes at you,
It
when
sounds
you're
like
5
a
years
thing that
old,
nightmares are made of.
right? And you see that, and thank goodness I had guides that said, this will not kill you. This is nothing to fear. This is going to be good for you. But the moment I would experience any fear-based emotion, then my perception of it changed to the extent that I would snap back into my body. My light body would rush back into the physical. And then when your light body is operating at a frequency that's expansively higher than your physical, and then you come in very quickly, what occurs is your body freaks out. It begins to buzz, it begins to shake, sort of like, the first car that I drove when I was a teenager. It was my dad's old Ford pickup. And when it would get above 60, it would kind of do that rattling thing. Well, that's what happens to our bodies. When your light body comes back in after fear, you freak out. You have sleep paralysis, which is nothing but chemicals that your brain is flooding throughout your body because fight or flight response takes over. Adrenaline rushes through your bloodstream. It paralyzes you because that's what the brain does to the body. When you think that you're in a fight or flight primitive response, the brain sends chemicals that actually paralyzes your body so that you won't hurt yourself, fall out of bed, or start punching yourself or something. So the brain knows that the body will try this, so it paralyzes you to protect you from you. And then what you're thinking is that you've experienced a nasty abduction. So where I'm going with this big rant. I stopped teaching astral projection because humans were freaking out.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
How related is night terrors to something like that?
Same thing. You've experienced something so that you have seen something from a movie, and the subconscious is a really tricky thing. The brain will attach itself to fear and create a pattern therefrom. So for instance, this is how the hypothalamus works. This is very scientific. This is not as hokey as what most people think. Scientists can confirm this. Your hypothalamus will begin to work with your brain to create certain types of hormones and an enzyme that floods your entire system, and it causes you to create patterns from that so that you can learn. We are naturally aligned to do this. Oh, you fear that? I better stick on to it. Fear is the strongest frequency, with the exception of love. Fear and love, based upon the laws of duality in this universe, are the strongest things that your brain can learn from. So if you experience more fear than love, your brain's going to attach onto that, and then it's going to create another pattern. The next time you get something scary from a movie, it's going to say, be afraid of that. You saw that in a movie. You remember that? Tricky stuff there. And you see you had a bad experience with a bully in third grade. Okay. And then maybe a cop pulls you over when you're 35, and there's some similarities in the way that they're acting. Your brain goes, ah! So it's the same with night terrors. Your brain has caught on to something that was from an original negative core belief system and expanded it and created a pattern to cause you to be afraid of it. And you literally will terrorize yourself as a method of expansion so that you will have so much fear that perhaps you will work through that fear, perhaps. But unfortunately, most of us just go, that's bad, I never want to experience it again.
Yeah, they sort of
with fear,
tuck
the
it
only
away.
way out is through.
What about when you're afraid of death? There's a lot of individuals that fear death, and so if they get really sick, they hang on.
The only thing I'm afraid of is heights.
Heights?
I've tried climbing a radio tower, and it's like, nope, not doing that.
So,
But I think that's a different, I don't know, would you agree that that's a different type of fear?
It is a different type of fear. And I'm glad that you broach upon this topic, because fear can actually be utilized in a manner that is to your benefit. Remember when I just stated the only way out is through. So in your case, Mike, you did have a past lifetime where you died from falling after climbing something, from being, a little bit courageous and somewhat silly. And you were trying to prove to yourself that you could do it. A rainstorm came, and it's metal that you're hanging onto, and you could imagine that it would be easy to slip. So your brain remembers that and says, oh, you might not want to do that this time around.
Yeah, that didn't work out so well.
Right.
But what about the fear of death? So many individuals hold on, and
That's probably really relatable to the fear of the unknown.
what do you think?
Fear of uncertainty in general is one of the biggest fears in the human conscious collective. when we don't know, when we don't have a reference point to what we will experience, and when we don't have a reference point to what we are experiencing, our brain likes to capture that and then synapse and create a pattern of fear that. We do what we know, and that is primitive programming from our parents, from our societal systems, from even educational systems, and especially from religious constructs.
Yeah, I wish it's one of the things I try to do is give people the idea of no fear. I don't fear much. You know, there's not too many doors I won't walk through that I know I'll be okay. And, my mom's asked me, how did you take that job? You didn't, you haven't done that stuff before. It's like, figure it out, it'll be all right.
Well, fear, there is good to fear in certain situations. Sometimes.
I mean, there's a lot of fear with the political situation now. It's like, hey, just chill out and hold on, see how it turns out.
But we also have to have some kind of fear. If we have $1,000 sticking out of our shirt pocket and we're walking down an alley and we're saying nothing's going to happen to me.
That's not fear. That's good sense.
Well, what do you think? What do you think, Pamela? Is it good sense, or is there some fears that help or hinder us?
Fear can help you or hinder you based upon your programming and your ability to get through that programming if it's a hindrance, or honor that programming if it is helping you. So in other words, this is free will. Fear can be, and what you just stated about, do we walk down a dark alley with $1,000 in our pocket and worry about if someone's going to get us or not? That is our logic kicking in. And that's when fear can come in and say, well, before you get afraid, there's a little something that I would like to express to you so that you don't experience fear. Perhaps you should not carry $1,000 in your pocket down a dark alley in the middle of an inner city location, or wherever you're going to be, any location for that matter.
Right.
I've gotten my pilot's license, ride motorcycles, and it's just, I don't fear much.
Sure.
And it's a freeing way to live, I think.
I think so too.
I just wish other people could experience it and not be. I see so many people that are paralyzed. Oh, I don't want to do that. What if this happened? What if this and that? Whatever. It's like, the universe will take care of you. I think, at least that's what I believe.
What do you think?
I believe that for you, based upon your galactic origin, Mike, that it's easier for you to say that. And in your past lifetime experiences, having experienced death in every gruesome way possible, you're programmed that there is nothing further to fear because you've experienced it all.
I understand. Well, let's go back to that galactic origins. Does everyone come from the same source of?
Say you named off different alien types, and they live in different places, like Andromeda or Pleiades. Are you getting to, do they serve the same God or source, or are there different source or gods of different places in the universe? Is that what you're doing?
I was just going to basically find out a little bit more about who they are, what they do. Are they all the same?
Okay. Describe them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start with what Mike said because I find it really, really very relevant that we are not all the same. Source is incredibly expansive. We are multidimensional beings. And when I say origin point, particularly when someone comes to, for me and sits down with a session and a big question is, where am I from? Who am I? Okay. You are source. Well, that doesn't exactly
satisfy that need.
Right.
To just say you're God.
Right.
Okay. And if you go to a psychiatrist and say that, he might label you with some sort of disorder and say that you are grandiose in nature.
Yeah.
So I do not mean to say you are the one God, and each and every one of you are the one God. This is not monotheism. This is not religion. You are not Jesus Christ. But you are a fractal, perhaps, of a lineage of Jesus Christ. I am a fractal of many types of beings who have had many experiences. But here's the fun part. There's no such thing as an origin point in terms of the galactic experience. I say that as a reference point because humans have a duality-based belief system that causes them to believe in linear perception. So what I mean by that is you believe this happened first, and then I became this, and then I became that, and then I became that, and then I remembered and rejoined with Source, and then I did it all over again. Not really. What it looks like is more like a Fibonacci spiral. So if you consider a spiral, and here's the starting point.
Okay.
Okay. Except not really going in this way. Look, imagine looking down upon the spiral. Okay. There's a reference point. That is your most dominant place where you really have just really expanded there, and you're learning the most there. And when you expand, you go outwards. And if you're in a duality-based environment, then you kind of go out here a little bit and things look a little hard, and then you expand further. And the more you expand, the more you believe that you are separated from this center point. You see what I'm saying? You forget that you are God. Every time you learn more, you expand further, and you forget about this little center point here that you are Source. So Source has expanded so much that there has become a reference point of I am someone else. I am another being, okay? But what's truly happening is more like you're looking down upon that Fibonacci spiral, and Source said, I want to be this, I want to be that, I want to be that, I want to be that, and I want to be that, all simultaneously, happening all at once. No past. It's happening now. Every outcome that you could ever possibly conjure has already existed perfectly, and the result is already there. And then Source looks at it and goes, that's perfection. I'm going to expand further. That's even more wonderful. I'm going to expand further. So it's present and future, and present and future, and present and future. That's all that it is. And it's happening all right now. Everything that you're learning, the reference point, going back to that, being Pleiadian or Arcturian or human, if you will, doesn't really exist. It's just more about where did you learn the most. I really enjoy Lyra. I've spent so many existences there. You see what I mean?
What would that world be like?
Lyra is a star constellation from which many sentient beings that are now humans exist. So at some point in time, when duality began to exist in our universe, there was a war between sentient and non-sentient beings. Many humans have called this the Great Lyran and Reptilian War, the biggest one that ever existed. Of course, beings came in and said, oh, sentient loving beings. They have a bunch of metals there. They have a bunch of wonderful technology there. They've got a lot going for them. I wonder if we can go take that. And of course, it worked there for a while. Unfortunately, that is what happened because that became a duality-based environment. The moment the Lyrans said, oh no, fear was involved, duality was created. And from that point in time in our particular universe, those beings left. They didn't want to be killed, so they left. They left and they began to become Pleiadians in the Pleiadian star system. They began to become Arcturians, which is actually in the Butes constellation. It's not in Arcturus at all. So they became Alpha Draconians in the Orion belt. They became many types of beings, but when they died, they learned and they incarnated, and from the point of expansion that is known as duality was then created, and many star constellations were created, and they created each of them created their own universal games. The Pleiadians went through everything that Earthlings are going through now. The Arcturians did the same, and they went past it, and they are now in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and even 11th dimensional perspectives. So with that being said, just stop me. I could keep going. Go on.
Well, I was going to say, are the aliens from these other worlds, did they all start at 3rd dimension, or are they starting at 4th or 5th?
There is no starting point. It's happening in many perspectives. So I particularly don't hold any non-sentient perspectives at all in my nature. So in my genetic coding system, in my coding, I was created in a way that I chose not to experience any second dimensional, like negative dimensions where things were primitive and everything was kill or be killed. And in other words, that's kind of how Earth started with dinosaurs eating smaller beings, and it's still going on in the food chain every single time we just eat a piece of meat. So this is the first time in my point of relevance that I've had an experience like this.
Huh.
So I expanded by having this experience, but I don't have any particular non-sentient point of reference. So what happens, to answer your question, is that some are experiencing a 11th dimensional perspective while simultaneously experiencing a 5th dimensional perspective, while simultaneously experiencing a 3rd dimensional perspective. For instance, I'm going to show you, I like tools, so this may help. If this is Earth, this could be Mike on Earth. This could be Mike on the Pleiades. This could be Mike, as an Alpha Draconian, which I don't think so, by the way. But if he wanted to experience a non-sentient nature, where beings are killing lesser beings, he could go do that. And all of this is happening right now. You see what I mean? Did that answer it?
Well, I was thinking, if we would travel to Pleiades, what would we find?
It depends upon what perspective you wish to see.
Okay.
And the Pleiades also, much like our Milky Way, goodness, depending upon which galaxy you travel to and which universe for that matter you travel to, you could land pretty much anywhere. So try to be specific if you're going to astral travel, and make your intention very clear that you'd like to experience a fifth to sixth or seventh or eighth dimensional, all the way up to 11th, whatever you want to experience. Don't just say, take me to the Pleiades, because you could land at a particular perspective where the Pleiades were sitting ducks to the reptilians and getting pulled apart left and right. Huh. So be specific when you choose to travel. I learned that very early on.
Huh. It's rather interesting. This Christmas time, we're going through DNA. If you want to find out your ancestry, get a DNA test, and it will tell you different parts of the world. It's too bad we don't have a DNA for the spiritual. If we could do something for our oversoul or our higher spirit form to really find out where we have been or where we are at the present time. Unless you have a neat nifty.
Isn't that the...
I suggest getting an Akashic Records reading.
That's what I was going to say. Isn't that the Akashic Records?
It could be.
Yeah, Akashic Records reading, but not just from the human relative standpoint. Many people will come towards a reader of the Akasha and they will get a bunch of their human past lifetimes. But when you come to a galactic historian who can see through the ether, you will get it all. Human, non-human, you will get all of that. That's why people come to me.
And so you're able to sit down with the individuals and help them to better understand not only their perspective is not just the Earth, but it's many different.
What good is that? How does that help a person?
Because each time you learn in a different frequency, in a different dimensional environment, you are carrying over different etheric abilities in your coding. In your DNA, you are carrying a specific code that you are building and you are learning. I'll give you me as an example. I am in my biggest incarnation from which I'm learning the most at this moment. I'm learning the most from a group of souls who call themselves the Lion people. That's what many humans would call my origin point, because I'm learning the most from them. So I would gain that knowledge. All of my shamanic experience came from there. I was a shaman there. I was a seer there. So once I awakened to that and I'm like, oh, really? I was a being that had the head of a lion and actually I had wings and I was 10 feet tall and I was strong. And then I saw the movie The Avatar, by the way, for those of you who want to understand a lot about the lion people and the Lyran felines. And I went, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I saw when I astral traveled to my own planet. That's why I tell people all the time, if you want to learn about the lion people, watch that movie. So there are some relevance, back to going through with what you guys were saying about movies. There's some relevance. There are some things that whoever's writing these movies that are more modern, someone knows a little something about galactic origins. I recently saw a movie called oh goodness, I'm going to forget. The Arrival.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
The Arrival was all about a type of being who are known as Syrians.
Syrians, did you say?
Syrians, Sirians. Those are
And-
Syrians.
Syrians are, where do they hail from?
The Sirius constellations, either Sirius A or Sirius B.
And is that the dog stars?
I don't really label things by astronomy because I don't have that
Oh, okay.
relevance point, but I'm sure an astronomer might can look it up for you. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Were they a group of individuals that in parts of Africa where they talked in some of their myths about Syrians? Is that possible? Maybe I'm confusing
Syrians
them.
have been discussed, and you can see depictions of them in hieroglyphics and cave drawings and, the stories all around the world because they do have the specific capacity to jump in a starship and come make a visit.
And have they been good to us here on our planet? For the most part.
They don't really come in to formulate a reference. They haven't been good or bad. They have learned a lot from us, and now they are choosing to incarnate as us. They are incarnating with these. A lot of humans have a lot of galactic background as also being a Syrian being. So within their divine nature, they are also Syrian, in their genetic coding. So I'd say they've been quite good to us, at least those from the Sirius B constellation. I have a completely different opinion about those from the Sirius A constellation, but that's my specific filter based upon what I've noticed in my experiences between Sirius A and Sirius B. And this is another thing that you should know when you go to a galactic historian. They're operating through their own filters and experiences, of what they see. And many people with whom I've sat down, who can read in the way that I do and who can travel and record history in the way that I am. I'm just a big giant galactic recorder, so to speak. That's one of my purposes here is awareness. When I sit down with others like me, they say, well, I saw Atlantis this way. I'm like, well, you were the Atlantean that was killing the crap out of me. So of course you're going to see that as a medical advancement, and good for you, but I died. So can you see how me being a Lemurian in that perspective, if you look up the galactic history of the Atlantean-Lemurian War, I could see it quite differently. So I, having been a member of the Sirius B collective, the Sirius A collective being quite non-sentient, there was a massive civil war, and I was on the losing side. So I have a bit of a different perspective.
Do you see leftovers, if you want to call it that, if you observe somebody walking down the street, any characteristics of any of these type of beings, where they may have, they have a different walk or a different presence, or is it just more otherworldly than that?
You're going to have to reframe your question because I'm not following you.
Can you look at an individual and get almost an immediate understanding of what their
just by their actions or the way they talk, that's that kind of person?
There are some specific personality traits that seem to be embodied in humans that do come from certain galactic races. And if you'd like me to expand upon it a little further, I can tell you.
Please do.
Yeah. Pleiadians are immensely loving. They carry through etheric abilities of empathy, healing. They are the sensitives on the planet. They are really, empathy is their strongest nature, and they're the ones that are trying to save the planet in terms of complete humanitarian, very environmentalist. They're the ones that'll say, I get along with my dog better than I do my lover, which is a valid perspective. Sometimes dogs are more awesome. So just saying, I do have a bit of a Pleiadian perspective that's very dominant as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Right? So I really love my cat, even though she doesn't particularly love me. And I honor her perspective more than I honor the perspective of humans who hold more reptilian nature. So in order to expand upon that, there are some Alpha Draconians that hold a lot of components of certain, what doctors would call, borderline personality disorder, where someone's changeable and they're switching their personality based upon their needs. So when you're being good to them, you're doing things right for them in relationships, then suddenly they're like, oh, I love you, and then they're blasting compliments and love bombs left and right. And then the moment you point out something that perhaps you would wish for a compromise on, they're like, you're terrible. How could you ever say that? And then they turn into your enemy. That's an Alpha Draconian characteristic. Switch, I call it the switch, where you can't hold any consistency in your nature. Whereas a Pleiadian would say, you know what, I'm really upset with you right now. And, you kind of let me down, and I love you no matter what, but we need to truly compromise. And you see the difference in how a Pleiadian embodying a human form and an Alpha Draconian would use their emotions to manipulate you into submitting to their needs. Which doesn't work that's a non-sentient nature. So I use Alpha Draconians in a way. I don't want you to think I'm picking on them, because there are many versions of Alpha Draconians who have a race that are incredibly scientific, and although they may not be sentient, they are ethical. So there are some Alpha Draconians that are highly ethical and powerful, and they don't use that for negativity at all. They use it for scientific advancement. So there are many, let's see, within the Lyran feline race, they're dominant, and that's my, as you would call it, origin point. Their dominant nature is extrasensory perception. These are where the channeling abilities come from. This is the ether. These are the ether seers. These are the shamans. Okay. These are the alchemists. Alchemy was created in a Lyran feline environment, because in our environment, when Lyra got invaded by reptilians, what happened was we became refugees. We had to leave our existence, go to a constellation, a planet that was within star, rather. It was a dwarf star at the time. So almost dead star that was in the Taurus constellation. It was called the Hyades. These beings are called Hyadians. And we had to devolve into a third dimensional existence and basically a nitrogen dust bowl, and then evolve back again into our 11th dimensional perspective with basically nothing. So we created an Earth type environment, and we created from the ether with ether-based elements that aren't even known to the human mind, that you can't even really grasp, with different cosmic elements. We combined them in order to create, hydrogen and nitrogen and oxygen and atoms and all the nucleus of atoms and protons, neutrons, electrons, and everything that was necessary in order to create the science of what you would call an Earth environment. And then we went further and further and further. So alchemists come from the Hyades. They come from the Lyran felines, the ether seers, the historians, the extrasensories come from there.
How about Venusians?
I'm sorry? Venusians?
Venusians.
Venusians, yeah. That's where Nikola Tesla hails from.
Okay.
And these are the scientists. These are also the environmentalists who come in with unity consciousness, who will use their scientific advancement in a very, wait a minute, my mic is going out. Okay, hopefully that corrected my microphone problem.
It sounded like it did.
Yeah, when I start talking about some of these beings, it invites that portion of me. So now we have Nikola Tesla. Great. He just popped up on your show. So with that being said, the way that he explains it to me, and he wanted me to explain it appropriately, that's why he came. Venusians come because they use science. Even though they are non-sentient, it is not bad. They're using science to teach humans how to have free energy, how to gain equality, the dominant personality traits and life purposes of equality and unity consciousness, but they use science to do it. He was wanting to give you free energy. Now, he wasn't one to come up and hug you, but he was one to come up and say, you can be free, and here's how, and let me teach you. Unfortunately, our government at the time did not have that same positive agenda.
Sounds like Andromedans are halfway in between that and the Pleiadian.
Okay, Andromedans. When Earth began this entire galactic experiment, and when many galactic councils got together and decided to create Earth, what occurred was the Andromedans said, Oh no. I can see where that's going. If you create an environment where beings are going to do bad things, there's going to be bad results. So I want nothing to do with that. I'm going to stay over here in my system of advancements that I've worked so hard to create. And here's another thing, evolution. Andromedans will say, stay out of evolution. If humans are going to keep killing themselves and then the earth devolves and evolves and devolves and evolves, then let them do it. But I want nothing to do with it. I've got my own thing going on over here, and they should have their own thing going on over here. And also, it's the same thing for an Andromedan, and they're very funny about this. An Andromedan, if you take them into an environment, like Yellowstone, that has been untouched and is protected for thousands of years. An Andromedan will say, don't touch it. If the sign says don't walk there, don't walk there. Don't put your feet in the soil. Respect. Don't mess up the ecosystem because it's operating the way that it is, and it is perfection, it is divinity, but I want nothing to do with it.
Sounds like it's like the idea of like, oh, Earth, there goes a neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, they've got love, they've got respect, but Andromedans are pretty much like, well, now we'll help. Now that they've exploded a zillion times, now we'll help.
The nice thing about you is the fact that you have shared a lot of different videos. You have a lot of videos on many subject materials, and one of those subjects deals in depth with aliens or off-worlders, or however, aliens they get such a bad rap with that name, I guess. But we encourage the individuals to look at Pamela Aaralyn's website.
I like the latest one with Yeshua, and I think you've channeled him 2 or 3 times.
I think this will be the 4th time. Mm-hmm.
Or at least published those things. I like the idea of he wasn't here to be worshipped, idolized, and that he was more of a teacher, That's, I don't know, kind of brings it down and more empowers people.
Yes.
I thought that was
that's
valuable.
A Pleiadian purpose. He was predominantly Pleiadian. Christ consciousness beings predominantly come from the Lyra star system, and they come in with many perspectives that are sentient and Pleiadian in nature normally.
Well,
it was a good message.
Yeah.
And I'd encourage anybody to watch those, and it doesn't necessarily fly in the face of religion, but it kind of opens a few doors.
Yeah, it's just on my YouTube channel. All of them are there. My All About Extraterrestrial series is there. We haven't added one for a while, but we will. Mainly at this point, we're getting most of our information through channelings, and we have been very busy, and we're going to be offering quite a few channelings throughout next year. We slowed down this year so I could take a break, but next year we're going to be offering 1 to 2 a month, so it's going to speed up significantly.
Very
These things where you can get on the internet and put in your own questions like you did this past one?
Yeah, we offer a web portal, and it's called Zoom, and you can go in through the question and answer section there. And then you don't have to see me. No one can see you. It's just you watching me, but you type in your question and then I respond live in it, but you get to be a part of my channeling experience. I love to involve people in that way. I'm a trans channel. I do trans channel, but there's a difference with channelers, with clear conduits. I do both, but I don't prefer trancing. I don't prefer getting into a trance. I like to be in complete control of my body and my mind, because I really firmly believe that it's easier to interact with you better that way, because otherwise my eyes are closed and I normally can go to a completely different existence and dimension. And it's hard to bring me back from trance channeling as well. But I am a trans channel, TRANS, and that means that the being is with the channel, but that doesn't mean that being comes in and controls me. It's not a possession. Some Christians were saying that there for a while. You're channeling thus, you must be possessed. So there were some interesting things with that. I'm like, no, actually, I'm fully aware that Jesus is speaking through me. And when he's done, I bow and thank him. And then he kind of steps out for a bit, and I will scroll for another question in the live channeling event. And then I'll bring him back in, and I'll bow to let you know that he's back in. And it happens a little bit like that because I love human interaction.
And I know that you've you've trans-channeled many really great individuals through our history.
Yeah, saints and angels.
Yeah, as well as some current ones like Dolores Cannon. You know, your website is filled with a lot of inspiring wisdom and knowledge, and really want to really appreciate the time and the effort that you do in helping all of us better understand.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. You can find me at aurareader.com. I do individual sessions. I do group sessions. I've done some recent live channelings as well in person, and will continue to do so. So right now I'm not on tour, but I do them sporadically as we can, you know, because those are normally donation based, and we try to get very, you know, affordable venues, which is a difficult thing to do. So we are primarily just offering our channelings on YouTube. You know, and we do that live, and then we go back, and with very little editing, I like to keep things transparent and authentic. We go back and just share it to you in that way. But we will be having some workshops coming up soon, and
very good.
some online, some in person. But you'll see if you keep track of us via our newsletter or our Facebook page. So if you want to find me on Facebook, you can find me at facebook.com/groups/Aura Reader. If you want to find me just on Aura Reader, just go to aurareader.com, and you can find links to some of those videos there. If you want to find me on YouTube, just search Pamela Aaralyn.
I'll probably put the links down below. How do you choose who you're going to channel? You know, whether it's Saint Michael or Yeshua or whoever. Do they come to you as like, hey, I got something to say, or what?
A lot of the times, yes, and a lot of the times it's not always that easy. It may not be time for them. When Dolores Cannon passed, she would not talk to me. Many of you know my story. She would not talk to me for a while. She said, "I'm resting, and I'm not going to talk to anyone."
Right.
You know, so she rested for a good 6 months or so before she would talk to me. And when she started talking to me, she said, "I will not allow you to trans-channel me, especially not in front of my group of community, until I know what you do." So she observed my work. She started standing in my sessions individually, you know, with my clients. And I'm like, okay, we got Dolores Cannon. You know, so she observed me for a while, and she made sure that my agenda was in alignment with hers. And it took a while, and it has taken quite a while for me to build relationships with these beings. I don't just say, well, you know, we're going to do Tesla one day.
Yeah.
Basically, Tesla took a while too. He woke me up at 3:30 a.m. playing board games with fractals for about 3 months before he would allow me to go live, because I didn't understand math.
I understand. You know, sometimes they got to get our attention and help us to better understand too. Pamela, I really appreciate you coming on our program. I hope that you will be willing to come back on very, very soon, because there's a whole host of different areas that I would like everyone, I'd like myself to better understand.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. Thank
Okay.
you for having me.
We're talking with Pamela Aaralyn. She's a clear conduit channel. Mm-hmm. She trans-channels individuals, and we thank you, Pamela.
Thank you so much.
And Mike, thanks for watching.